Hello, everybody. I'm Chris Krueger, Senior Manager for Content with the Davis-Phinney Foundation, and welcome to this month's Living with Parkinson's Meetup. Like everyone on screen, I also live with Parkinson's, and in this monthly series, we gathered to discuss how Parkinson's impacts daily life for us. Each month we talk about a specific topic, and today's is depression. So, Sree, today's topic is one you suggested, and I'll pass it to you in a second. But before we do that, I just want to invite Wes, who you invited to join us today as a guest, to just give us a quick hello and maybe a quick bio if you can, Wes.
Sure, Sree. Thank you for inviting me. I'm really excited about the opportunity to talk with everyone. I'm from Washington, D.C., living out in Davis, West Virginia. So I live in a 500-person town and a county with 6,000 people and one stoplight. So very different from me living in D.C., where I worked for 16 plus years at National Geographic as a filmmaker. I then started my own company at the start of the pandemic. I was diagnosed at age 34. So that was 8 years ago, the day before my 35th birthday. And I also have deep brain stimulation implants that were put in June 2003. And I guess that's me.
Well, thanks, Wes. When Wes and I talked about this call today, we noticed that we actually both know one of the same physicians in that area because I was in Maryland when I was diagnosed as well. So that was a fun little coincidence. And so, Sree, you wanted to talk about depression today, and I thought that was a great idea, and I think everybody else did too. So, can you talk about your experience of that and why you wanted to bring that as the topic today?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about depression because it's something I've been going through recently. And I just thought it was a topic that could be raised that is maybe not talked about enough. And sometimes I think people don't realize that they have it. And I'm not here to diagnose anybody. That's up to the doctors, that's up to the physicians, the official people. I'm just here to share my experience and what it was like for me. And I really did not know I was depressed. I didn't have really an idea because I thought depression looked one way. The way I saw it on television was the only interaction I had with depression, like watching it in TV or reading about it in like a comic book or whatever it is, something like that. So I had this idea that depression was I'm like in my bed for 3 months. I haven't eaten for weeks. I was tearing out my hair, all sorts of things. But what I realized when I had a problem is when I was in bed for 5 days straight, hadn't eaten really much, hadn't brushed my teeth, hadn't taken a shower, and I was just feeling very like down and out and everything about the world about Parkinson's disease. And then what happened was that kind of transitioned into something like apathy, where I was supposed to go to Christmas with my family in the East Coast and see my niece and nephew, whom I love tremendously. And when that time came around, I just looked at like the text message saying, "Hey, do you want to fly out?" And I felt nothing. I felt absolutely nothing. No excitement, no interest. And then I thought, I think I have a problem. So I reached out to a bunch of friends and I talked to them about what I was going through. And Kat knows this because she's one of the friends I reached out to. And they all got back to me and they said, "I think you need to see somebody. It sounds like you might have depression. I think you need to see somebody. We don't know for sure, but it definitely sounds like you need to see someone." So I ended up seeing a psychiatrist. And she diagnosed me with depression and apathy and then put me on some medication, which I resisted. I did not take it like I was supposed to. And then I stopped taking it and then took it again. And I'm on a much more regular schedule. And that is my experience. So I still struggle with depression. I still go through apathy. I struggle with all of these things. And as I work full time, it really impacts my work as well. And so I don't know if anybody else has that experience. So I was kind of wondering what everyone's experience with depression was. And please feel free to share only what you're comfortable with sharing. So I'll maybe pick on Nicole.
I don't get those moments where I want to just not wake up or like stay in bed. I get more of I'm very really grouchy. I get really irritable. I don't have very much patience. And so that makes it hard when I have teenagers at home and they're not very patient. So it's just a whole bunch of just fireworks going around. But for me, it was in the beginning when I first got diagnosed, I was so anxious. And as my symptoms have progressed, I have found that anxiety kind of increasing. I took my kid, my youngest one, who's 16, for a hand therapy for something that he had, and I I couldn't drive in the freeway. I just could not. And I was in the freeway. Well, when I told myself, you can't drive in the freeway, not the best place. So I had to just say, okay, just you can do this, go on the next exit and then go the back roads. But during that moment, I have never had that feeling. And that really made me feel just defeated. So I've had to find ways to um, just let myself know that it's okay. You can find other ways. You can think outside the box. You can drive the back roads. You can take extra time. And that's how I show my depression. I feel just not useful. And so that's what makes it hard for me.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Nicole. I'll just quickly chime in and say the first thing I noticed before I got diagnosed with Parkinson's was I had anxiety about driving. Like I had anxiety about backing out from my driveway. I had anxiety about making a right turn on a street. I'd made a right turn for years and I had no idea what was going on, but it's just sudden anxiousness and I couldn't like breathe. And it was just overwhelming. And I thought, this is so strange. What is this? And it was only like a year later or so that I got diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. And then when I looked back on this, I'm like, I noted down that was an issue and I didn't know what it was. And now I know what it was. So I'll maybe choose somebody else. And if you don't want to be picked on, let me know. Just kind of like do the block sign like they do in Family Feud.
I'll volunteer. Yeah. This is really fresh for me. Very timely. I have recently gone through a huge loss, one of the biggest losses in my life, and I'm going to try not to cry, but lost my mother. Both my parents are gone, and so that has been hard. And I think I don't recognize myself. Like I'm very angry. And I don't even know what I'm angry about. And so like I feel a lot of shame about I see myself as a strong person and a kind person and a very productive and successful person. So it just really has shook my core. And I keep trying to give myself permission to just sort of be, okay with where I'm at, but it impacts others and it distances me from the people I love most. And those are the people I really need. So I don't know why shame is what comes up for me. But that sort of spiralizes the depression and kind of exacerbates that, which makes me feel more shame. And I think it's just because I see myself differently than the way I am presenting right now to the world and to people I love and care about in my work, in my personal life. And so I don't know if others can relate to that, but that's been my recent experience. And it's so fresh that I feel it every day almost.
Karen, I have a question. Oh, sorry, Stan, if you want to go ahead.
Go ahead.
I know for me, when I was first diagnosed, I don't think I actually internalized it for a little while because I fell into work. I had so much to do. Like I was running live events at National Geographic, piloting a VR program, applying to Apple, running to do all these different things. And I've kept myself very well distracted until recently. So that's also one thing. I know that work can present an escape, but don't let that get too much of your time. You do need, at least from what I've experienced, you need to take some time and sit with it, which I know sucks. I'm sorry. It really does. Stan, it's all yours. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, I think, I'm a retired family physician, so I dealt with a lot of people with depression in my practice. And a couple of things come to mind. One is that, the good news is that with depression, it's treatable, unlike Parkinson's, where we don't really have any medicines that can affect the disease for the positive. People do get better with medication and therapy. So the problem is, I think, is there's still a big stigma that I probably have myself that, we don't really want to admit that we have depression and anxiety. It's not a socially acceptable thing for a lot of people. So I think we have to work through that. And like Sree said, it's sometimes we don't even know if we have it. It's something we don't really know. So we need to increase the awareness that it's something that a lot of people have with Parkinson's. Definitely a lot of people with Parkinson's have it. And then we got to get people into treatment because people do get better. It really does help.
And go ahead. Sorry, Kat. Or Stephanie. Sorry, I'm sorry to be quiet.
Jeff, go ahead. You go ahead, Stephanie.
Well, as you were talking, Stan, I was thinking about how, the stigma with depression is still, I think, so much a part of our society. And I remember, like, even as a teen, struggling with depression, but not really knowing that that's what it was. So, Nicole, to kind of piggyback on what you were saying, the kinds of experiences that I was having was that irritability, sort of anger, outbursts, and kind of ragey feelings, which were was really scary because it felt very out of control. And then very unhelpful, unwelcome thoughts that were also very scary for me. And thank God I had a friend that said, I'm worried about you. And I was, I think, probably in my late 20s. So I had been kind of, moving in and out of depression from my teens into my early 30s. And I'm so grateful to her for saying, I'm concerned about you and I think you need help. And in talking with my doctor, having this awareness of, people have other illnesses that are treated with medication, because I was resistant to medication because I thought, well, why can't I tough this out, or why can't I, sort of rise above it? But there's clearly something chemically different in my brain. And then I'm so grateful for medications, because suffering with those very scary sort of feelings and thoughts I just think, man, if I had access to this when I was a teenager, I would have had a happier teen. But then the other thing that was coming up for me, and I don't know, but sometimes I wonder, if some of the depression that I experienced in my early years was like a prodromal Parkinson's symptom. I don't know, but it's making me curious and making me wonder. So some of you know that my husband also lived with Parkinson's for 13 years, and his presenting symptom was anxiety, which was so out of character for him. And he thought that he was going to prison for something that it made absolute no sense. And we talked with his family physician. He was also experiencing depression. His dad had just died, so there was grief wrapped up into that. And when we saw his family physician, as we were sort of describing symptoms, said something like, well, are you thinking it's depression or Parkinson's? And I was like, well, why are you looking at me? You're the doctor to diagnose this. And he started on antidepressants, Rick did, and his mood improved and that anxiety improved. But of course, the motor symptoms were still present. But I'm so glad this is a topic we're talking about, because I think if we can, lessen the stigma and encourage people to seek care, the quality of your life can be so much improved with medication and support and therapy. So thank you for this topic today. Thank you.
Yeah. I'd love to chime in and share that, both as a provider and a woman with Parkinson's, the stigma I got stuck between those two things myself with my own symptoms. And like many others, I suspect out there, and like we've talked about, my anxiety and depression far predated my experience or diagnosis with Parkinson's. And it wasn't really until after my diagnosis of Parkinson's and then taking meds for Parkinson's that it really helped to really better treat my symptoms. Um, and I, like so many others, I don't want the medicine to rule me. I don't want to be defined by this disease, this diagnosis. And I try to share, like with everything else, we have choices. I tried to be my own patient and listen to my own words, that if I have an opportunity to feel better, I was going to try. And the medicine sometimes can take a long time to be effective, which is even harder because you're struggling, you're having this doubt, you're not sure if it's helping. And I've given myself permission to stay on the medicine and to embrace it. And recently I had a very significant loss to Karen, one of my oldest and dearest friends from Portland, died, passed away from ALS. And I have some of that survivor's grief. I have some of that real rage about it. And that compiled with some anxiety symptoms that are creeping back up. I've been starting, I actually went up a little bit on some of my medicine, and I darn it if I don't feel better, right? There I am again. Yes, I still have anxiety. Yes, I still have depression. Yes, I still have Parkinson's. Yes, my friend is still gone. And I have a choice about how I move on from here. Darn it. Yeah. And that choice is I'm going to stack my pills in my pill box and try to feel grateful. And like you, Wes, too, focus on the things that trying to shift back to that positive and, I will work for dopamine. Thus I'm in my overalls and out working on chopping things down and burning things. And,
Kat, you might need to offer some context for that, just to make sure you don't get
sorry. Oh yeah, sorry. Bernie.
I assume
Kat's out there setting fires.
No. I'm not a narcissist. I am. I. Oh dear. Thank you, Chris. What would I do without this community? I'm gonna be in real trouble one of these days with these videos come back. We own some property and we are curating and trying to curate the land a little bit and get it more fire safe and ready. So I am burning those piles.
On purpose.
Yes. On purpose. Yeah. On purpose with permits and yeah, thank you.
I'm interested in this idea of the prodromal phenomenon. For some reason it sticks in my head, this story of a guy who was never depressed in his whole life, and then he got a pretty serious depression. And then a few years later got diagnosed with Parkinson's. And I really think that depression and anxiety can be part of that, just like, loss of smell and constipation and REM sleep disorder, things that people have before they get diagnosed.
Yeah, I just wanted, thank you, Stan. I wanted to share something about, like, from the viewpoint of parents. I think it's a really great opportunity for us when we have children that we need to show them that we are human and that we do make mistakes, and that, especially for those that where depression shows up as rage or anger, it's important to say, oh my gosh, that was not okay. That what I just did right now was not right. And I did it that way. And in addition, I told my kids, hey, let's look for a psychologist so that you can talk in a safe environment and share what you feel when you see me do this. And now, we've seen it. They feel freer to share when they're upset. They feel freer to share when I share, I'm having a bad day. I need to be left alone. And so they understand that part. And I think it's a new stage in our relationship that I didn't really think of before. And it's kind of a gift because I'm helping them be self-aware, and I'm helping myself be self-aware. I'm in Generation X where everything's like, suck it up. And now I'm, you have a 16-year-old telling me, I had a bad day. I think I need to take some time. And I love that.
Yeah.
And I have to agree with that as a child, not someone who has, and I don't have a child, but I am a child. The Parkinson's itself has brought my mom and I closer in a way that I couldn't explain, especially when I had the DBS surgery, because she's the one and she stuck her foot in. She's like, I'm taking you to the hospital. You don't not gonna rely on one of your friends. I'm taking you. So we got a lot of time together to talk, and it was really, really wonderful. And I want to answer a question that came in through the chat. It was from Donna. She said she was starting SSRI for anxiety, but SSRI are causing more tremor. She's only been on it for 4 weeks. And I know, Chris, you and I talked about my journey with SSRIs. Basically, I decided to take them because what's another chemical that's going to go in my body to try and replicate what my body's not making sure I'm taking straight dopamine? Let's throw some SSRI in there. I've actually had the opposite. And now this is my personal experience where I started about 5 weeks ago, and I started it after I took baclofen, which is a muscle relaxer, because my neck was hurting so bad from the DBS treatment, about on January 1st. So it's been about 5 or 6 weeks I've been taking Lexapro. And actually, I found that it actually lessened my symptoms, my physical symptoms, to where I basically don't have any physical symptoms, knock on some wood, from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. most days. And I was like, that's weird. What's going on? What's happening? So I immediately messaged my doctor. I was like, this is happening. He's like, well, it seems like the SSRIs lowered your basal stress level, and stress is such a huge Parkinson's trigger. And I know mine get much worse when I'm going on stage or doing like that stress. So I think stress, depression, and anxiety really, they kind of the three horsemen, I guess we should call them. I don't know if there's a fourth one, but there probably is something we should think about because, and I know, Donna, it didn't work for you. I don't know if you'd stay on longer. Maybe you need to check. I would say just check in with your doctor. My neurologist, he prescribes my Lexapro and baclofen. So I really haven't been to my primary care doctor in like 2 years, so much that they called yesterday to make sure I was still a client. So just throwing that out there. I also, this is my personal experience. So
yeah, thanks, Wes. I think that's really important to highlight because what works well for me might not work well for anybody else on this in this whole conversation.
Yeah.
And that could be the same. And also, I want to highlight one thing that was in the chat also, which is a comment I think Jim made, which was it's really important to be professionally evaluated for a proper diagnosis so that you know if you have a clinical or situational depression.
I will say something interesting about Lexapro, and I'm not recommending the medication or anything. So I was getting migraines in my 20s. And then my parents knew I was getting migraines. They knew that I was on medication for it. And one day my dad was flipping through this magazine back when everyone still read magazines and not like their iPhone or their Android. And he saw this advertisement for Lexapro about depression. And he got freaked out. He's like, he just turned to me and he said, "Are you depressed?" And he pointed to the advertisement. And I'm like, "No, I'm not depressed. I have migraines." And so looking back on that, I realized I probably was depressed. Looking back on my behavior in high school and in college, I have no idea if that's prodromal for Parkinson's, if it was related to something else, or if it's a mishmash. And I think those things are very difficult to determine. But I do know now that I am depressed and most likely have been for quite some time before I was diagnosed. And I can say knowing that actually gives me some comfort because I know it's a name. But the other thing I feel is some people mention shame. I'm actually more ashamed to mention that I have depression than I am to say that I have Parkinson's disease. And there should be no shame for either one. I mean, if you feel shame, you feel shame, but there's no shame in any of those things. But I would hesitate to tell my work that I have depression. I would hesitate to tell certain friends that I have depression because it just seems like, oh, she's got depression, whatever. She's just being lazy, or she's being difficult, or she's just being moody. And I'm like, no, it's actually more than that. And I think a lot of people don't understand how depression affects the body. So I'm wondering if you guys could kind of tell me a little bit about how depression affects you physically and mentally. Like a little glimpse into your life. Karen.
What it looks like for me is isolation. I don't feel like being around other people, but I need to be around other people. It's like I want to be around other people, but I can't seem to get myself to be around other people because I feel bad about myself. In my body, it looks like much worse dystonia and tremor. Poor sleep. My hair falls out, believe it or not. I think it's a menopause thing, but and I just don't eat normally. Like I skip a lot of meals. I skip a lot of meals and then I'll eat junk in the evening. And I just lose interest in the things that I either can't gain interest in the things I love or I lose interest in things that I used to have interest in. And I feel like I have no interest, but it's not apathy. I mean, I know what apathy feels like, but depression is different for me.
I think that Karen, the idea that you lose interest in things, that doing things, you're not as interested as you used to be, is really, for me, always been a cardinal symptom of a depression. You don't get you don't get excited about doing things. And I think the other important part of depression is that the symptoms persist for quite a while. It's not just a day or so. It's days and weeks that you just realize. And I think someone else mentioned that have been going on for a long time. So for me, those two things. I mean, there's a lot of symptoms of depression, but for me, those two things are sort of a cardinal way of that I think about it.
For me, it's that's same with Stan and Karen. It was kind of a lack of wanting to do things. I moved out. I left DC, so there's no one around me. I don't really know anyone in my town. I've spent 4 weeks in my house and haven't left. Granted, there was 73 inches of snow, but still, I didn't leave my house, and that's something that Stan and Karen I can really relate to when it comes to that. And also for me, the reason that I jumped on the Lexapro now is because my DBS surgery was 2 years ago. So I've actually gotten to a place where we have gotten the right levels, because on one end, one implant it's supposed to handle my tremors. On the other side, it's supposed to handle dystonia, mouth pulling, all of those other symptoms. But if I get my tremors better, that means my dystonia and everything else shifts too. So I had to wait until that settled. And I couldn't really do that until after I had my last, recalibration appointment in December. And then I felt okay enough with my cyborgness and where we had set things off to make sure that I could then focus on depression. So I put it off, and I probably put it off too long because I did feel very apathetic. I didn't want to go out and do anything. And it's been night and day for me as far as that. And of course, my symptoms. But again, that is just me. But yeah, it was really interesting for me because the DBS, it affects everything. And I don't know what is caused by a wrong recalibration and what is caused by me. So I kind of had to eliminate the factors until I could figure out, oh, I'm just depressed. I'm a sad sack and I need to do something about it. So yeah.
But isn't it interesting the language that we use to ourselves internally? Sometimes I don't even hear myself saying it. Then I realize when I take authority over that and realize like, wow, I wouldn't talk to anyone that way. Why would I talk to myself that way? And one other thing, I didn't want to double dip, but this seems important. It's hard to talk about, but a lot of those medicines have side effects that are intolerable. Like the sexual side effects was not something that I was willing to do. And I've tried different medications and that was a problem. And I'm sure like my husband would rather have me well and not depressed, but those have impacts, between other things that maybe contribute. And that was a huge thing for me. And so I've been, even though maybe one of those medications has been recommended for me, I just wasn't willing. And I have a lot of fear about changing medication also because maybe I do need to change a medication, and I'm still afraid of it.
And I would say there's one thing, Karen, that you just said that really strikes me is the way we talk about ourselves and the things we don't even realize we're saying. Like I realized that was a sad sack. And that took me back to the person who actually is the reason why I even thought about maybe I am depressed. It's my good friend Ella, who's like, I don't like this person who's talking about my friend Wes this way. I don't like him. And I don't want him to be here. You need to figure out where Wes is. And it was her telling me that I was like, well, maybe I do. And so I just wanted to point that out, Karen, that you really bring up something very hard for all of us when we all talk about whatever's bothering us, the way we talk about ourselves and the grace and the kindness we don't show ourselves, but will surely show our friends, our kids, our spouses. We need to remember we deserve that kind of kindness too. So, Karen, I just wanted to point that out and thank you for bringing that up because that's a really big, important part.
Yeah, Karen, you also brought up something else that I think is really interesting in a at a sort of more expanded level, which is the trade-offs of the treatments we take generally. And it's not just the antidepressants and that class of medication. It's also some of the Parkinson's medications that can affect you differently and you have to sort of make a choice, right? Do I take the extended release and it lasts longer, but then maybe there's other things that happen differently because of that. And it's a real challenge that can be kind of overwhelming for some people, I think.
Yeah.
And that was one of my first forays into not feeling very good about myself as I was taking so much ropinirole that my feet were swelling, so I couldn't wear shoes. So I was like, well, am I going to be able to wear shoes or is my hand not going to shake constantly? And eventually I had to get off ropinirole because it was so bad that I was starting to damage myself. So I had to, go on carbidopa, which is a whole level of medication I was afraid to take because of the side effects.
Yeah, that's a familiar journey, Wes, that many of us share. And it's tough. And I think, with sexual side effects, I think with all the side effects, it's important to talk about it with your care team, with your providers. They need to know if you're having those side effects. They need to know, your partners need to know, your family needs to know. I mean, I don't know that your kids need to know the sexual side effects of SSRIs, but at least maybe not when they're teenagers or young. But I think it's important to talk about with your partners. And also, certainly it can affect libido, and dating, I can imagine, is really tough to be thinking about when you're trying to treat symptoms. So, yeah.
I just want to chime in and say one thing I thought I did, but I realized I did not do, is I thought I was frequently in touch with my doctor, my movement disorder specialist, via email about what was going on with me. And I realized that for the past year or so, and the year and a half, I've been losing weight partly because of dyskinesia, partly because of depression. I mean, that's my personal take on it. I haven't heard anything from the doctor. But I haven't actually talked to my movement disorder specialist about it. I just figured, I can handle this on my own. And it wasn't a conscious decision that this is something I can handle on my own. I was like, oh no, I don't need to bother her with it. I've got this. And then it sort of continued day after day after day until I just got used to it. And suddenly I realized, oh my God, I've lost X amount of weight because I've just been too depressed to eat. My dyskinesia is getting worse. And my doctor doesn't know any of this because it's like when you are on medication every 4 hours, which I am as well, that time goes by so quickly. You don't even realize it. Like before, it used to seem like the 4 hours was a huge, long stretch of time. Now it seems like I take my medication, I blink, and then I have to take it again. So I didn't even realize I was not contacting my doctor. So she has no idea until recently that I've been going through this. So I think one of the things that happens to us is we get settled into maybe how our body is sometimes, or as somebody mentioned before, we may not even be aware of what's going on. And sometimes we need to rely on our friends or colleagues or community or family to kind of inform us of that. And so for that reason, I think, as other people have mentioned, we need to start talking about these things because sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And you need someone else to reflect back on you, what they're seeing. I think, Nicole, you had wanted to say something in the past, 2 to 3 minutes.
Oh, it's okay. What I was wanted to add is I think my apathy is really closely linked to my depression.
Yeah.
I know that there are moments where I talk myself into being isolated. I kind of say, self, this is really nice. You have your plants, you're at home. You don't need to get out. You can order stuff. You can send your loved ones, and the 16-year-old wants to drive, and I'm like, go get me some, something of this, and he feels useful. I'm great, and you just talk yourself out of doing anything. So what we did recently, a high school friend reached out and she wanted to go for a walk. And I remember that Saturday, I was like, please cancel, please cancel, please cancel. But I said, I'm not going to cancel. They need to cancel. And finally we met. And I said, honestly, I was praying that you'd cancel. And she said, oh, me too. And I said, okay, let's make a pact that even if we don't want to go for a walk or whatever, we're at least going to see each other for 30 minutes. And that might add, so we had to make this pact that we're going to, not isolate each other. And, most of the times, if you reach out to your friends, they're probably going through the same things you are. I mean, the world is crazy right now, right? So they're probably having the same feelings you are, but not necessarily for Parkinson's. Maybe they have their own things. Maybe they're suffering their own depression. Why don't we reach out to each other and help each other out and tell each other one good thing a day? That helps you just kind of do, that just get out a little bit, And another thing is we've promised each other we're going to tell each other one thing we've done that day, whether
Right.
it's like a load of laundry. And I'm talking from wash to fold to put away, not just wash and then forget about it.
whole
That's a
thing.
lot of work. I don't know if that
But one
that
at a
sounds like
time.
3 distinctive activities.
No,
for
no,
me.
count it as one. But you know what? It's so much fun at the end. We tell each other, because the same talk that you're like, you don't tell each other, good job. But if I send it to
Yeah.
my friend will say, good job, and kind of party for me. And I feel great. And then I'll do the same thing for her. And so kind of find a buddy that you can do that and just kind of shame gloat, like you could just like, you don't want to
Shame
be like,
gloat,
I'm
that's-
awesome. But if you tell somebody to
But
tell
you're
me I'm
awesome,
awesome,
so it's
it
fine.
sounds better.
I'm not gloating. You're telling the truth.
I'm
And-
loving that, Nicole.
And I
Shame
have-
gloat. Yeah, thank you,
And I-
Chris.
And I have
Nicole,
to say that. Sorry.
That's all right. I'm just going to say, Nicole, that brings up, we haven't really talked about things you can do for depression short of medication and counseling. I mean, things like exercise and socialization and good sleep and self-care can go a long way to helping with depression symptoms. So those
And
are all
Nicole-
important. What's
Sorry.
that?
No, I'm sorry. I jumped over you, Stan.
That's
I
all right.
just wanted to say that when the pandemic started, a group of me and my 4 very close former colleagues, and really close friends, we started a weekly Wednesday at 8:30 in the morning called Cafe Corona. And we kept that invite throughout the pandemic until 2025. There were some weeks that is the only thing that really kept me going, or even knowing it was a different week. So Nicole, add on to it, plan it out. If you're a planner, put it in your calendar, get it in there, add it to it, make sure you've got something in there. And now it's my overly assertive Kiwi, who used to be my occupational therapist, who I call her every Saturday morning at like 7 a.m. because we're both up too early. But we'll talk for like an hour, and it's just, you've got to build it in, you've got to bake it in. And Nicole, you're spot on that. Talking with people. Sorry, Stan. Or sorry, Kat. I can't remember someone I just cut off. Sorry.
That's all right.
Or was it Stephanie? It was Stephanie down there in the bottom corner. She had her hand up for something.
Oh, I was just going to build on what Stan was saying, and I put it in the chat that one of the things that I have found really helpful moving through depression and grief is a mindfulness practice and a gratitude practice and meditation. And sometimes I've, done journaling, journaling gratitudes at night, like 3 things that I'm grateful for across the day. And it could be an experience or a person or, or gratitudes in the morning. What am I grateful for as I look toward the day? So I think I appreciate you bringing those up, Stan, because those are very accessible things that are available to us and getting out and taking a walk. I mean, I'm looking out my window. It's been very stormy in southern Wisconsin the last couple days. And today it's blue sky and there's like puffy Simpsons clouds in the sky. And like that just brings joy. So just wanted to build on that.
What we
I
all
wanted to
need.
chime in on- oh, I
No,
wanted to
go
chime in on what you said, Stephanie. Like those are all things that I would love to do. And I've tried to do them, but my problem with that is they don't work in like I'm expecting like a solution in 2 days. I've done gratitude for 2 days. Why am I not suddenly feeling grateful for everything? Why is the depression not going away? I've done mindfulness practice for like 3 minutes in 3 days for 3 minutes. Why is this not working? And I think it's the same thing like with your medication that you take for depression. If you're on medication, it takes a while for these things to work. So like before I would take the depression medication and like, it's not working. I'm going to stop taking it. I just did not really realize that I have to do it consistently and I have to give it time to work. And with me, I have ADHD, so I want like an immediate result. I'm like, boom, I want the PhD now. I don't want to have to go to school for 6 years and write a thesis and defend it. I just want you to give me the PhD. So with all these things like mindfulness practice and things like that, the key thing I think for me is being consistent and just letting the time and the consistency do its work. And that I find very hard. I don't know if anybody else is like that.
So there's something that happened to me during the first year of the pandemic. One of my very good friends who is HIV positive, and everyone knows that he's a public advocate for the HIV plus community. We were talking and he said how because he wasn't eating on a regular schedule because he was at home, he was having trouble remembering when to take his medication. So, you know what I did? Every day at 1 p.m., I called him. It was like, this is your lunch break reminder, take your medication. And that was accountability that was showing up. It wasn't even a good friend. It was just a friend, just someone who needed the help. So, Sree, if you need help reminding you to take medication, I can be your man. But also, I think everyone here, we have to remember we have to reach out to our community. We have to reach out to our care teams. And that means our partners, our children, our parents, and ask them, be like, hey, I need your help to get through this, which I know is easier said than done for a lot of folks with pride, shame, all of it. But sometimes you kind of need to put that away and realize that if we're going to get better, or if we're going to help ourselves, we may need some help to do it.
I'll take you up on that offer, Wes. I'll take you up on
I will. I will definitely. I will call you. I will harass you. Be like, look, you taking your medication? Don't lie to me.
Karen, you got your hand up.
One thing I was really good at for a while, and somebody reminded me of it, is about a gratitude practice. But the way that I would do it is every day, I had sort of a little rule for myself. Every day I would list 10 things that I'm grateful for. And it was more like a meditative practice, but I had certain twists to it. I could not repeat anything in a week. So that was very hard. And sometimes it was the tiniest of things, like I'm glad I don't have a paper cut. I'm glad I have all my fingers and toes, or, you know, I'm glad I didn't get a bad haircut this time, or like whatever it is. Maybe it was that small, but usually it was I'm grateful. Like I'd be grateful right now for this conversation that we can all relate, and also the audience, that I think we are all sharing some humanity here, and that makes me feel connected and full of hope. And that is a moment. So sometimes it's something like that. But if I did it every day without fail, and that was part of my practice, it did help. But for some reason, I didn't think to do that. So I'm going to start.
We forget our own tools when we're feeling down. It
Yeah.
takes friends and family and care partners. And I also just want to share too, for me, I feel like counseling has more than once saved my life. So I think we'd be remiss to at least not give a nod to whether it's your pastor, whether it's your best friend, whether it's a group like this, or whether it's somebody that you pay for your devoted time to talk about your stuff. That combined with medicine, our four-legged animal, our four-legged friends, I'm seeing everybody's puppies, right? Our communities, whether they be 2 people or 2 million people, all all of those things are so important. And this foundation gives us a place to come together, and not to sound like Pollyanna or toxically positive, but I think it's partly why we reach out to one another, right? It's partly why we show up here. You all are a gift. Yeah.
One of the coolest things that I've made myself do, because I would think, like, I would say, oh, I like this about Kat, but I wouldn't tell them, and so I make it a point now, as part of, instead of saying, as part of my form of gratitude, I tell them that. So when my niece says, I need help with this, I say, thank you for asking for help. That is awesome. You're badass. Or if I notice that my 16-year-old does something funny, I say, you're so witty. You're amazingly funny. Do you realize how awesome that is? And so I make sure that I do that. And so I want to take this time, Wes, you did an awesome job. Sree, this topic is awesome. Kat, I love your book. Stan, I love that we can, we have a physician's point of view from that, from all the views, and I love that. I love Karen, your beautiful heart. And I love Stephanie learning about all of your life and how it's hard for all of us, right? Mm-hmm. And Chris, I love that you facilitate these incredible people to talk.
Well, I'm really grateful for you all for volunteering your time and taking the courage and making the effort to participate in this. I mean, it's not easy, I know, to share all these difficult parts of your lives. And that's true for the folks in the audience too. So thank you for being here, everyone. And we'll look forward to seeing everybody again on the third Thursday of the month in May. And, thank you again, everyone. And I look forward to seeing you next month.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.